Thank you very much, Speaker. The proposed bill has been crafted with the support of the Ontario Professional Planners Institute and the Ministry of Municipal Affairs of Housing, and some of the members of the Institute are in the East Gallery this afternoon, so welcome to Queen's Park. Speaker, Bill 70 repeals the Ontario Professional Planners Institute Act 1994 and enacts an updated and more modern act called the Registered Professional Planners Act 2019. The proposed legislation, Speaker, provides a framework for membership in the Institute, but it's also important to note, Speaker, that the proposed legislation does not create new red tape or regulatory regime. Speaker, Bill 70 demonstrates once again the government's commitment to improve the quality and livability of Ontario's communities. And the proposed act continues the Ontario Professional Planners Institute, an organization that governs and regulates its 4,500 members, made up of urban, regional, and rural planners from across the province. Now, if passed, Speaker, this act will safeguard the public interest by strengthening the profession's practice requirements and accountability of the Institute and its members. The proposed bill, Speaker, sets out procedures for dealing with complaints and establishes a disciplinary process, including right to appeal. In addition, the proposed legislation provides for the appointment of investigators to conduct investigations under the Act and sets out their powers. Further, Speaker, the Act establishes procedures for determining whether a member of the Institute is incapacitated, including a committee process with the right of appeal, as you would expect. Speaker, if passed, Bill 70 will safeguard the public interest by strengthening the profession's practice requirements and accountability of Institute members for the planning advice and counsel they provide to clients. Speaker, let me give you a little bit of background about the Institute. Some of the work that they do falls within the private, educational, and not-for-profit sectors, including urban and rural development, urban design, environmental planning, heritage conservation, housing, and economic development. Now, some in the Legislative Assembly will know that prior to my election as the MPP for then Whitby Oshawa in the by-election, and where I was elected February 11, 2016, I served as both a municipal and regional councillor with the town of Whitby and the regional municipality of Durham. Now, during many of those 13 years, I was the chair of the Planning and Development Committee for the town of Whitby. And I came to appreciate that planners are skilled professionals who work to improve the quality and livability of Ontario's communities, and they all aim to ensure that we have healthy and sustainable communities, Speaker. At that period of time, I also came to understand and respect the impact that their recommendations have on the development of healthy communities. In the region of Durham, as you know, Speaker, we have 8. In the case of the region of Durham, professional planners have worked closely with those municipalities, public servants in those municipalities, and other partners to move growth along with effective, progressive, and integrated long-term planning. And in that process, they have to consider the master planning processes that each municipality has, and also that those particular plans have to be consistent with the region of Durham's master plan on planning also. It's equally important to, as part of this debate this afternoon, Speaker, to acknowledge the shifting policy objectives and competing interests in communities, because they continue to evolve, don't they? They evolve every day. with social and technological changes. Planners have a significant continuing role in effectively developing and trying to aspire towards healthy and sustainable communities. Let me take you back to 1994, Speaker. At that time, that's a long time ago, isn't it? It's 25 years ago. Ontario pioneered the first private legislation in the country in support of the title of Registered Professional Planner. But here we are after 25 years, Speaker. And many other jurisdictions across the country have enacted more updated legislation that reflects the current practices within the planning and development profession. Speaker, I described earlier that there's some real benefits in Bill 70 for the public and OPPI members, and they bear some repeating. It allowing OPPI to carry out many of the duties of a regulator, such as providing new investigative powers, improved and enhanced professional standards by strengthening practice requirements, accountability, and providing for an investigative vehicle for professional misconduct. Now, none of those features are vastly different than other regulatory aspects that we have for other professions, but they all aim to improve the practice of the planning that goes on in this province. Speaker, Bill 70 creates prohibitions and offences respecting the use of specified designations and initials by unauthorized individuals. And further, Speaker, the legislation provides a framework for membership and sets out procedures for dealing with matters such as complaints against former registered professional planners. Speaker, Bill 70 addresses and develops procedures for determining whether a member of the Institute is incapacitated and outlines powers to appoint an investigator to examine incidents of professional misconduct. Overall, Speaker, Bill 70 makes the profession more accountable. It ensures that consumers are receiving advice from accredited professionals and further ensures, Speaker, that there are adequate mechanisms in place to ensure that malpractice is dealt with appropriately. Speaker, what's clear when you step back and you consider the implications of this legislation is that professional planners are people who are ultimately tasked with determining our community's state of health and well-being. This bill, if passed, will improve a system that, in its current state, Speaker, limits the enforcement provisions of its members. We believe that more robust powers for enforcement of professional standards will lead to a healthier profession. Speaker, again, I look at my own riding of Whitby. There are currently 10 developments underway in West Whitby, and I'm sure you've driven through them along the corridor of Roslyn Road. Also within the village of Brooklyn, just north of the main part of town, and is covering hundreds of acres of land. And there are evolving and urgent economic, social, and infrastructure issues that place pressures on my community to make choices. And Whitby is certainly not unique. There's pressures on other municipalities that comprise the region of Durham. Our communities turn to registered professional planners to professionally inform these choices. They're important choices. They're important choices to families in the region of Durham. Professional planners' knowledge and experience support decision makers within municipalities on their path to sustainably build social and natural environments. The result of all that effort, Speaker, is a truly inspired region of Durham, a truly inspired province of Ontario, and I thank you for the time, and I look forward to the contributions of others who will be speaking on Bill 70, and also look forward to the outcome of the vote this afternoon. Thank you, Speaker.
Further debate, I recognize the member for Humber River Black Creek.
Thank you, Speaker. It's always an honour to rise here. And I also want to congratulate and thank the member from Whitby for this very important legislation, and also his brief conversation prior to this being tabled just now, or the second reading being tabled, actually. So it's also good to see the government recognizing regulation and how it is very important in protecting people, because that's what this does. This bill is a reimagining, a retabling of a bill in the prior session of legislature, but I guess with a little bit of time, I believe it to be also an improvement, because in one area, which I'll get into later, it does improve. And it also touches on an area which I'm critic of, protecting consumer rights. It doesn't create a new profession, but rather protects the title of planners, and that will actually in turn protect consumers. I also want to thank the planners and those who are here to be here as part of this bill, and thank you for all of your incredible work over the years. I recognize that. In my past life working for a city councillor, I had the privilege to learn a lot from planners. I'd like to actually recognize and probably embarrass one such planner, because he is a humble man. His name is Al Rozowski, and he works for the City of Toronto. And I've been able to learn a lot from him over the years. Planning, like everything, grows and we learn with time. In the area where I live and represent, we have, for instance, townhouse subdivisions that had issues because for their time, if first responders wanted to come, it was difficult for them to find which unit in particular they had to visit. And so planners with that sort of past have been able to develop and strengthen planning processes as they move forward. City planners that I would love to recognize, all of them, play such an important role in protecting communities, because all planners improve the quality and livability of communities and the sustainability of the future. One issue that Toronto is facing is the replacement of parcels of land where jobs are being protected. And we are seeing them being replaced by intensified condos and residential. But planners are the ones that I've seen over the years working with the city councillor that were steadfast in ensuring that decisions that were made around planning were made in a very holistic way, in a way that looked at all needs, but above all, the needs of the community themselves. And that is so, so important. Like many things in lives, if it's not our area of expertise, I think we all just look at it and rely on it and take it for granted. But everything we see around us in this municipality and everywhere else is a tapestry with many, many considerations that go in by these planners to put together something that benefits all of us. So it is for that reason that I really respect their important work. I also want to read out some words of support from stakeholders that show the importance of this legislation. For instance, Jason Farragon, who's an RPP and member of OPPI, for more than 20 years, registered professional planners in Ontario have operated under our current legislation. We hope this new bill will better protect the public and those who use planning services by articulating the role and value of professional planners in the planning process. Great plans need great planners. One, as I mentioned, of the improvements is to actually place penalties for individuals who are posing as professional planners when in fact they are not. This bill will allow exclusive rights for the designation of professional planner, again, exclusive rights to those who have earned it, registered professional planner, urbaniste, and urbaniste certifié. And the initials RPP and UC. If someone poses as a planner, whether it be in a speech or in reference to membership or whatnot, they may face up to $15,000 in fines and other issues. And this is very important in protecting those that are relying on the knowledge and service of these planners. Again, I'm really proud to be able to rise and discuss something that we can all agree on, because sometimes in this House it gets a little heated, and those of us on other sides of the aisle here may be at odds on how we believe the future should be. But I think this afternoon seems to be a bit of a love-in, because we are discussing things that we both agree on. And certainly the respect of planners Giving them a designation and the exclusive use of that is very, very important. And I'm really proud to be here and support and thank the member opposite, the member of Whitby, for retabling, improving upon, and modernizing an act that has taken 25 years for us to consider. And I sincerely hope that as we move forward, we will be able to modernize and improve things in a way that we can both, as government and opposition, agree upon. So thank you, Speaker, and thank you for the opportunity to speak.
I recognize the member on a point of order. Oh, no. I'm sorry, I can't recognize the member during private members. I recognize the member for Etobicoke Lakeshore.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Good afternoon, and I'm happy to speak in favour of this bill brought forward by the member of Whitby. And I want to commend my colleague across the hall. He also brought up that the Professional Planners Act in 2019 was originally introduced as Bill 122 during the previous Parliament, and it had all-party support. So I am happy to see that we're in agreement once again. It was actually introduced as a private member's bill by my predecessor, the member from Etobicoke Lakeshore, in the 41st Parliament, as his private member's bill. And I would be remiss for me not to acknowledge his work on this. And I'll even quote him when he spoke in the House on this bill during the last Parliament. He said, "Great plans need great planners, and great planners need great governance for their profession." And this bill seeks to just do that. During my time working at Toronto City Hall, before being elected to this House, I came to appreciate the importance of a robust and effective planning system. Ontario's planners are professionals working every day to create a healthy, livable cities. I want to make a brief aside for a moment here because I always want to highlight this wherever I can, and it underscores the importance of good professional planning. In my community of Etobicoke Lakeshore, one only needs to look at the Humber Bay Shores community to understand why good planning is important. That community, which includes a number of condo towers that have grown over the last 10 years, is the home of tens of thousands of people, 28,000 people, and it only has one road in and out, and no close transit. That's why when we build up our communities, it's so important to plan for it in the ways that people can get around and get in and out of their communities, and not leave transit to an afterthought. That's why having a robust and effective planning system is so essential. That story is also a great example, and I know the Minister of Transportation is in the room, for the need of a Park Lawn GO station. But that is a conversation for another day. But that brings us back to the bill at hand. The bill, if passed, would create a much stronger framework to govern registered planning professionals in Ontario. As it stands, the Ontario Professional Planners Institute has a wide range of responsibilities, including establishing the professional code of practice of its members. Equally important, they also institute a mandatory program of continuous professional learning as a requirement of membership to ensure that members are current with modern practices. The bill would improve upon these existing functions. It would do this by repealing the 1994 Ontario Professional Planners Institute Act and replace it with a modern and updated version put forward in this bill. The original 1994 Act was, for its time, fairly revolutionary. It was the first piece of legislation in Canada to protect the title of registered professional planner. But after nearly 25 years, it's time to update that legislation. The bill would continue the Ontario Professional Planners Institute, which governs and regulates the over 4,500 planners that work across all of Ontario urban and rural communities. Right now, the OPPI is lacking key provisions to create a complete governance structure. Madam Speaker, for example, this bill creates rules around who can use specific designations and post nominal initials by people who aren't authorized to do so. Registered professional planners, or RPPS for short, are designated members of the Professional Planning Institute. They go through university, training, work experience, and certification before they receive their designation. Ontarians deserve confidence that the designations given have meaning. This bill, if passed, will ensure that happens by creating prohibitions and offences for people who claim these designations without actually being designated by the OPPI. Additionally, right now it is financially difficult for the OPPI as a professional regulator to actually pursue a claim of negligence or malpractice against someone in that profession who is negligent or commits malpractice. This bill, when passed, or if passed, would provide the OPPI the opportunity and ability to pursue these claims, providing accountability to the sector. It is important to note that Ontario professional planners, their institute is eager to see these changes passed. I've been told that the institute was disappointed that the bill was not a priority by the previous government and did not make it to third reading. Altogether, these changes will provide better title protection of professional planners and increase accountability to the people of Ontario, both of which are important, laudable goals. During last Parliament, this bill received support from all parties of this legislature, and I am sure this bill will receive similar support today. Thank you.
Further debate? I recognize the member from Timiskaming Cochrane.
Thank you, Speaker. It's always an honour to be able to stand in the House and talk about the issues at hand. And I got to say, and I say this almost every Thursday, Thursdays are my favourite day because we actually talk about usually nonpartisan issues, talk about issues that are important to people's communities or important to people's lives. And on that, I would like to commend the member from Whitby for bringing forward this piece of legislation. And I'd like to thank the planners who are here and planners across the province. In my former life, I was also a councillor in a much smaller municipality in Northern Ontario, and I got to say, sometimes our planners frustrated me because the councillors, the political people, they want to get things done, you know, immediately and immediate gratification and show they're getting things done. And there was always a planner going, well, no, maybe, you know, if we're looking at longer term, it maybe putting that there doesn't make as much sense as actually like take a 25 or a 50-year picture and think about your community in 50 years from now. That's, to me, the biggest benefit of planning, because you have a much broader window, much longer landscape, and I'd like to commend.
Order.
I heckle everyone. Your time is coming. So.
Order in the House.
But that is the strength of planning. And planning, planners need good legislation backing them up. We are full support of this piece of legislation. Full support. But the question you have to ask yourselves, and we all have to ask ourselves this is a good piece of legislation. I commend the member from Whitby. The one that was presented before by Mr. McMeekin was also a good piece of legislation. It didn't it passed unanimously at this stage, but it didn't go any farther. Now, the trick is to get this farther. Now, that lies solely on the government side. The government controls the calendar of what gets passed and what doesn't. So we all agree we're going to vote for this piece of legislation. We all agree. But for this legislation to pass, the government of the day has to bring it forward. That's up to them. Now, there's a couple roadblocks for that. And this is, I'm not trying to be partisan here. I'm trying to lay out the land. this particular government has stated over and over and over again that Ontario is massively overregulated, and that in their mandate, they are going to eliminate 25% of the regulations. Now, I don't know if that's these are included, or if they're really going to want to add regulations to a sector, even though it needs it, but that is up for the government to decide. So you are, the engineers, the planners are going against the tide a little, because the government is stating that they are going to get rid of 25% of Ontario's regulations in the next 3.5 years. So the tide going against to get less regulations and in effect less planning, the tide is going strongly, the government tide, notwithstanding the member from Whitby, but the government tide is going strongly against this bill. Now, they can prove me wrong, and again, I would like to be proven wrong in this bill. It is fully within the government members, the House Leader, the Whip, the Premier's office could say tomorrow that whatever committee this bill goes to, this bill gets priority. It could be passed in a very short time. We all agree. It could be passed. I can assure you that the opposition is not going to stand in the way of this bill. We didn't stand in the way of it last time. We weren't the opposition last time. We were the third party. Now we're the official opposition. We weren't quite as successful as these guys, but we're not going to stand in the way. The only thing that is stopping this bill from becoming reality, and maybe nothing's stopping it, maybe in 6 months that this bill will be passed. And I will stand here and congratulate the government. But if it isn't, and if it isn't, and it could very well be that after the next election, unfortunately, tragically, you could be sitting there again talking about this good piece of legislation, because, newsflash, there are many other good pieces of legislation that come here on Thursdays that get unanimous consent, and they go nowhere. And that is at the government's purview. So I implore the government, because as much as they frustrated me when I was in Eventual Council, I fully understand how important planning is, how important it is that you know that the planners you hire, that they are actually planners. I fully understand how important that is. I implore the government to take cue from the member of Whitby, from a former Liberal member. The government seems to say that everything Liberals ever had was bad. This one wasn't a bad Liberal bill. But now it's incumbent on our current government to pass it. Thank you.
The member for Whitby has 2 minutes to... Nope, just kidding. Further debate. I recognize the member for Thornhill.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. And we're debating today a private member bill put forward by our member for Whitby. He's also our Chief Government Whip, and so I'm very honoured to speak on an act respecting the regulation of registered professional planners. I think that a lot of times, you know, residents are at home and our constituents, and they're not sure how government works. They're not even sure sometimes what's a municipal issue, what's a provincial issue, what's a federal issue. They just hear a lot of excuses a lot of times. They want a project to move forward, or a project not to be moved forward, or a project to be changed, and they're told lots of different things by lots of different politicians and their staff, and they're frustrated. And a lot of times I think that the planners get blamed for what other people might want to hide behind. The fact is I think that planners are professionals who have a very difficult task, because they're sort of the ones who get trapped sometimes, different levels of government, different rules and regulations, and they're trying obviously to do what's best for the community and to follow whatever mandate that they're given. And to look at so many different aspects and so many different variables, and people always pick the one thing that they think was important that they felt was missed. So it's difficult, we appreciate that, but we also understand that it's important that our planners are well trained, well-educated, have the experience, and have the insight to do the proper job. And a lot of times that requires regulating the profession. I've said it here before, I'm an optometrist by training, and so therefore optometrists belong to the College of Optometrists, and we're regulated. We have continuing education, we have to keep up with professional standards. And so I think that the bill that we're discussing today is modernizing what was the original, I think it was 1994, that Ontario pioneered the first piece of legislation in terms of regulating planners. And then we kind of fell behind, and other provinces and jurisdictions leapfrogged over us and made improvements. And now we have to do the catch-up and make sure that we're managing to regulate, to allow the profession to regulate its members. Even one of the things is that they should be able to have oversight over members who resign, so that people can't resign from the profession to absolve themselves for any type of responsibility or malpractice. So what are residents worried about? Well, we see downtown, there was discussion this week that roads are being blocked for construction of condos. Now, I think if planners are given the instruction that they can only approve development where roads are not going to have to be blocked, well, that's going to change a little bit. They're going to have to go back to the politicians and the residents and say, well, you know, you want us to build right up to the sidewalk or right up to the street and not have parking lots in front like the plazas of the old days. Well, if we want to build up right up to the sidewalks of the street, well, we have to have room for the equipment to do the construction. So I think it's a bit of give and take sometimes, but I think that we also have to be realistic in what we're asking for and understand that there can be consequences and sometimes unintended consequences. There's heritage buildings that we want to preserve. We're going to be hearing soon from one of our members is putting forward the Golden Girls Act, basically to allow for people to develop suites within a home so that they can share a single residence, multiple units in a single residence. And it's frustrating, I think, for our constituents and the residents of our municipalities to understand sort of the limiting factors and the effect on business, the effect on parking, things like secondary suites. Some people think it's a great idea to allow more affordable housing by taking portions of existing housing that's not being used and making it with a separate entrance and making it separate living quarters for rent. And, well, the question becomes services for those extra people in that neighborhood. Schools, are they available? The question is often, what we hear up in Thornhill is people are concerned about parking. We hear concerns about flooding, basements flooding, stormwater management, sewage management. There's a building that went up just a few years ago, a condo building on Yonge Street, in Thornhill, that is not connected to the main sewer line, and a huge truck comes every Friday to empty some kind of septic tank that's there. That's of concern to the people in the neighborhood who felt they weren't consulted, and why did the building get built if it wasn't able to connect, and when is it going to be able to connect? We hear the new subway stations north of York University are leaking water. And I remember during construction that there was water underground and there were a lot of concerns, and it delayed the construction of it. Maybe we have to think about that when we're building condo towers with underground parking. What's the water situation? I know the planners think about it, but maybe the politicians have to be better educated as well and not just rely on the planners. So I'm just going to end by mentioning that I spoke to Silvio de Gaspers just this week, and he owns TAC Construction up in Vaughan. And I asked him about regulating the planners, and he said, look, planners are professionals. What he would like to see is that they have more experience in the construction industry, that's his frustration, is if he's dealing with something in a municipality and speaking to planners, and he's saying, well, that's not realistic, or that you're making things so much more expensive for us unnecessarily. So I think that there's a lot of variables. We all have to do our jobs, dealing with a lot of moving parts sometimes, including the planners. So thank you very much, and looking forward to more debate on this.
And now I return to the member from Whitby for his 2-minute response.
Well, thank you, Speaker, and to all the members who contributed in the debate on Bill 70, thank you. Thank you so much for your thoughtful contributions. I think that it touched on many areas of the bill that are important to the professional planners in the East Gallery here today. I think it bears repeating that the Act, if it should be passed, which I hope it will safeguard the public interest by strengthening the profession's practice requirements and improving accountability of the Institute and its members. It does not put in place a new regulatory regime. It does not, Speaker, add additional red tape. It's taken us 25 years to reach this moment this afternoon in the Ontario Legislature. And we have an opportunity with Bill 70 this afternoon to ensure that the government's commitment to improve the quality and livability of communities in Ontario today will be affected with one more plank. And that one more plank is Bill 70 with the features that are embedded within that particular legislation, Speaker. An important aspect that we all stand up for in this legislature is safeguarding the public interest. Safeguarding the public interest. Bill 70 does that with the new accountability features within the legislation. It strengthens the profession's practice requirements and accountability of Institute members for the planning advice and counsel that they provide to clients across Ontario. Thank you, Speaker.